How's it going, guys? Cody back again, dropping yet another video. Right, guys, this video, as you can see from the title, is going to be about mental health within prison. It's probably one of the most rawest, most real subjects you can speak about in prison. The amount of prisoners in the system with mental health issues is phenomenal. And if you haven't already got mental health issues, and believe me, a lot of prisoners do, prison starts mental health issues. I genuinely do believe that. And like I say, there are prisoners, I've served my time in prison with people with significant mental health issues, and being in prison compounds that, makes it if you're in prison with mental health issues, everything's a million times worse, 10 times worse, 1,000 times worse, 100 times worse. It really is. And any issues you've got in your life are magnified. Now, like I say, people can't grasp what I'm about to say, but most offenders, before they've ever been offenders, they've first been victims, right? They've grown up in care, physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused. Parents have had mental health issues. They've had mental health issues, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, grown up in care, care leavers, etc., etc. The point is, we've not had the best start in lives. And that's not an excuse for the criminality, because we all have to own our criminality. And even though you can't use it as an excuse, them things that I've just mentioned, they can be contributing factors to criminality and the root cause in many offences. They really can. And like I say, if you go to prison with mental health issues, I fear for prisoners that go to prison with mental health issues. I have seen firsthand. When I was in Strangeways, I was locked up 23 hours a day. I heard prisoners screaming out for help. I heard prisoners with paranoid schizophrenia having a psychotic episode, screaming and smashing the cell up and thinking that someone's in the cell and they're trying to do them harm, right? It's not a laughing matter. These are real people, real problems, right? I've seen, then I ended up in Forest Bank another time, right? And again, I was locked up, but I got more social, right? Then on the last stretch, I was a cleaner. I was unlocked from 6:30 in the morning, 6:15, 6 o'clock in the morning, till about 8 o'clock, 8:15, Monday to Friday. Saturday, probably about 8 o'clock, and got locked up about 5 o'clock. But the point is, when I was out Monday to Friday for 14 and a half hours a day, pretty much apart from roll count and stuff where I was locked behind my door, I saw firsthand mental health. And I've seen self-harm. I've seen suicide attempts. I have just, and the thing is, it stays with you, right? A lot of, as men, we do the old macho thing, oh, prison doesn't bother us and stuff like that. Prison affects you. I don't care who you are, how big and bad you think you are. Prison affects you. Some emotionally, some psychologically, some physically, because obviously prison is a very violent place. But we do the old macho thing, oh, prison doesn't bother us. I've had some of my best laughs in prison. I also contemplated suicide in prison. It's just what it is. And like I said, I'd not served the longest time in prison. In fact, I'm not a prison expert, guys. I don't proclaim to be. I'm an expert in my own experiences. But mental health in prison is just phenomenal. And prison officers are not mentally health equipped. They're not trained to deal with mental health issues. I see stories now when a mentally ill prisoner's taking his own life, and they say, oh, prisoners now, each prisoner now has a dedicated prison officer. What a load of bollocks, right? At Forest Bank, right, 9 times out of 10, there was 3 officers on the wing, 90 prisoners, 3 officers. So how come one officer give 30 prisoners, right, because obviously you've got your own dedicated key worker, 30 prisoners, right, to one prison officer? How can that one prison officer know each individual by name? They probably know why they're in prison, and they probably know a handful of people, right? Prison officers are not mentally health trained. And when you're in a private prison like Forest Bank in Salford, Pendlebury, right, prisons are not about rehabilitation, right? The prison's a business, and prisoners are used as pawns with the end goal being financial gain. The first aim of Forest Bank and the last aim is financial gain, right? And that comes at the behest of a lot of things: medical care, quality of staff. Like I said, mentally ill prisoners are put on these act books, right? And like I say, app books are, the idea of an app book is a mental health assessment, right? And it's a folder, and I've seen many, I've never been on one. I've got mental health issues, but I've never been on an app book. But I have seen people, I've seen prisoners, prison officers walk to the cell, they've had a folder under their arm, and they'll pull the prisoner out while everyone else is locked up, cleaners are out doing what they're doing, and they'll sit them at a table, a prison officer, and they'll be talking to the individual. How does that help the individual's mental health? A lot of people in prison hide the mental health. A lot of them can't hide the mental health because it's so fucking obvious, right? And these little books, these little app books and stuff, and you've got these prison officers that are not mentally, like you've got nurses in the prison, and the nurses, I did my knee in, right? Obviously away from mental health. I did my knee in, like I got like dislocated my knee, right? And the nurse was trying to give me paracetamol because that's all they could give me. The prison doctor is extremely hard to see. You've got to put apps in to see them and stuff. There are mental health professionals in certain prisons, but it's not consistent and it's certainly not good enough. And like I say, because mental health services are so inadequate within prisons, what we see and what flows from that are self-harm, are suicide attempts, are suicides, right? And nobody does nothing about it. There's no accountability. Yes, there's inquest after inquest after inquest, right? Taking 2-3 years to get an answer to why somebody died, why they took their own life. And all the word that comes back, you see prison and you see failings. And then the prison come out. We have actively recruited 3,333 officers. We have now invested, the Ministry of Justice invested £70 million into the criminal justice system. It's not going to bring the loved one back, is it? No, it's not. And the thing is, unlike the prisoner that spoke last night, right, and I've seen it firsthand, when you go to prison, if you turn up at prison and you've packed a bag, if you've had chance, and you go to court and you're sentenced, right, and you've got your medication, you don't just, your medication doesn't just stay in your bag and you walk on a wing and you put your medication and think, oh, I'll just pop one of my pills. It doesn't work like that. Your medication will get confiscated. When you go to prison, your mental health file, your doctor's file doesn't follow you through the gates of prison. No, 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 no. They have the ability to ring your doctors and find out. But if you go to prison and you say you're on severe antipsychotics, right? And you need these antipsychotics because the mind-bending drugs, your brain's obviously, like I say, mental health is no laughing matter. But you need this medication to think straight, to act as yourself, or to be medicated, right? And you go to prison with 20 odd boxes of medication because you need them. They'll be confiscated from you. You might not see them for weeks. You might never see them again. You might end up on a lower dosage. You might end up on a different tablet that's not as strong as what you was on. What happens then? Prisoners start to self-medicate. What do I mean by that? People in prison that have got severe mental health issues, and mental health on from high to low and low to high in prison. In every prison, up and down England, male to female, even to secure training centres, right, to young offenders institutions, mental health, there are stupid amounts of prisoners in the system with mental health, right? They start to self-medicate. What happens, because they are so vulnerable, right? And I don't like this bit, but it is what it is. Drug dealers on the wings. And like I said, I'm not blowing anyone up, not mentioning no names, but just it happens. They start to be offered drugs, initially on tap, on tick. Never borrow anything in prison. Why not? Because you have to pay double back. Double bubble, double trouble. You might not have an income. You might not have friends and family supporting you, right? But you're being given drugs. You should be on mental health, antipsychotic mental health medication. You are now in the grips of a drug dealer. You're being offered every possible drug. You're vulnerable. You start to take them drugs. A lot of people in prison take drugs for many different reasons. Some because they took drugs on the out. Some people take it because it's a coping mechanism to deal with the surroundings of prison. Some people take it because they're vulnerable. Some people take it because they've been spiked. Some people take it because they've been peer pressured. There was a prisoner, Forest Bank, Jordan Hyam. I don't know if he had mental health problems or not, I don't know. Ended up in Forest Bank on a short sentence. Someone gave him drugs. I don't know if he took them freely, I don't know if he was bullied into it, peer pressured, I don't know. Took spice. He died, he was brought back to life. He's mentally handicapped now. There's a picture of him on the internet of his mother gave, hoping that it would be a deterrent to others from taking spice. That's the reality. So like I say, people take drugs for many different reasons. Coping mechanisms, bullied into it, peer pressured into it, spiked. I've seen people physically spiked. I don't know. I've seen prisoners buzz that somebody spiked a vulnerable prisoner. I don't mean vulnerable nonsense. I mean a mentally ill prisoner that's vulnerable, right? And someone's said, oh, do you want to try a bit of burn? We know that the smoking ban and all that shit. Do you want to try a burn? And it's spice. And that individual's fucked, written off. And they're laughing about it. You have a little bit, it grips you. Next thing, you're an addict. You're self-medicating. You're not getting the medication you need, or you're getting lesser amounts, or you're waiting to get your medication. And like I say, you've got to put apps in and everything. It can take weeks. Oh, the doctor's not available today. The dentist isn't available today. Whatever the case may be, right? Mental health services in prison are inadequate. And when you've got a private prison or a prison for profit, because that's the first aim and the last aim, it comes at the behest of a lot of things. And also, I need to pay tribute as well to prison officers there as well. Not all of them, because there's a lot of bullies, right? Bully boys. But there's also a lot of good officers in the system. We know about the bully boys, and I can't stand them, and I despise them. But prison officers, their caseload, by dealing with, you've got your prisoners, and then you've got prisoners with severe mental health problems. It's a problem for them. They're having to witness prisoners slashing up. Some people do it for a cry for help. Other people's are severing tendons and trying to sever fucking arteries, right? People are throwing themselves off landings. It goes on that way. People are stringing up. People are setting themselves on fire. People are setting their cells on fire, right? And prison officers are having to deal with this. Not bothered about the bully boys, but the decent officers, they're having to deal with this. It affects them psychologically, it affects them emotionally, it affects prisoners psychologically, it affects them emotionally as well, right? And like I said, the prisons are not equipped to deal with mentally ill prisoners. In reality, for me, there should be psychologists, a handful of psychologists in every prison. But these prisons, say it's a private prison, do you think they're going to fork out what it would cost per hour to have a psychologist within the prison? There are certain prisons where you can see a psychologist, but again, it's not consistent and it's not across the board. It shouldn't be a case of in one prison, after a few weeks of waiting, you get to see a psychologist. For me, a lot of these prisoners that are in prison should have hospital orders placed on them before they're sentenced, right? For me, if I was a judge, if I was in charge of the system, the court system here in the UK, I would make it so that if a prisoner submits a letter or someone that's up for sentencing and their doctors wrote them like a long note detailing the mental health that's there, right? I would defer sentencing. If that individual has to go to prison, I would send that person to an independent psychologist. If that psychologist says to me, if this prisoner is at real risk, if they go to prison of leaving prison in a body bag or mental health, like self-harm, suicide, etc., right, I would not send them to a prison. Prison's going to make that problem worse. I would send them to a psychiatric unit. But the difference is, if you go to now there's 3 high security hospitals in the UK, Rampton, Broadmoor and Ashworth, right? And I would send them prisoners to there. But where it costs £40,000 just to throw every mentally ill prisoner in prison, to send them to 3 of the high security hospitals that we've got in the UK, Ashworth, Rampton and Broadmoor, costs about £120,000, £130,000 a year. Sorry, more than that. £250,000 to £350,000 a year, depending on how complex the mental health is. And there are a lot of people in prison that should be in medium and high security mental health hospitals. I have spoken to families where their mentally ill sons, daughters, brothers and sisters have been sent to prison. They've taken their own life. It goes down that way. And there was other opportunities where 2 of the people shouldn't have even been in prison. They could have been dealt with via community orders, community payback orders, community service and everything. But if you go to prison with mental health problems, right, there's a real risk that you could potentially leave prison in a body bag. And I know that sounds quite far-fetched. It's a fact, it's reality. And like I said, seeing mentally ill prisoners taking mind-bending drugs, illicit drugs, not prescription, illicit drugs, new psychoactive substances like spice, self-medicating, getting into debt, bullied, paranoid, right? And they're taking these drugs that just, it's like Russian roulette. You don't know every person that, if you've got 10 people that take the same drug, each person's going to act differently. Seeing mentally ill prisoners on drugs, illicit drugs, is not good. Prisoners should be treated as human beings. We are human beings, right? But like I said, mental health services in prison are just inadequate. And what flows from that are shocking rates of suicide attempts, self-harm, suicides, and it's just, but nobody cares, and it's wrong, man. And like I said, there are app books. You've got listeners as well in prison. For those that don't know, listeners are like trained counsellors, trained prisoners that do a few-week course with Samaritans or Barnardos or whatever it is. And the idea is that, obviously, as prisoners, a lot of them have got that mentality where, with prison officers, where it's us versus them. So it's easy to speak to another prisoner. But as men, a lot of men, they suffer in silence. And they self-harm, they try committing suicide, or they're successful at committing suicide. Listeners in prison are fantastic people. They are readily available. But a lot, because of the whole macho thing and stigmas attached to mental health and being a man, and we've got to be macho, a lot of people don't ask to speak to listeners. I've also seen a lot of people that do. And they provide, for me, listeners are great, they're fantastic. But again, too many prisoners leaving prison in body bags. People are given a prison sentence, they're not given a death sentence. Every prisoner that goes to prison, general population prisoner, not nonces, should leave prison. Unless you're serving a whole life tariff, and then you're never eligible for parole. And obviously you're going to die in jail. But yeah, mental health in prison, guys, it's no laughing matter. And we need to raise awareness. If you've got any experience of mental health whilst being in prison, please drop me a video. I'll put my comments in the comment section below. I can also make you anonymous by blurring the video. Gonna leave it there, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Cody out.